Man, y'all know the face, y'all know the name. You're tuned into the World's Wellest Podcast, Talk Ain't Cheap Podcast, hosted by yours truly, Mr. It's the Movie Clear Talk. And I got a special guest here with me in traditional Talk Ain't Cheap fashion. You know I do not introduce my guests. I feel like that's very lackluster, and I feel like I shortchanged them. So, guests, please introduce yourself.
What's up? My name is Kanishka, and I live in Buffalo. I'm from few places. I grew up in Dubai, but I spent most of my life in Sri Lanka and Dubai, and then I live here now.
Bro, you are a very special person. You've done a lot of great things, and you live a life that I feel like a lot of people wish they could, but only few do. So I met you, and I don't know if you remember this. I met you at UB from when we did KOK, Culture Kings, Knockout Kings.
Hell yeah.
And you are an amazing dancer.
Yeah, that was a good time. I still have that jersey. I still wear it sometimes. It's good memories.
You are an amazing dancer. But also what I also remember about you is when you were one of the first people to tell me about Dubai before it became Dubai that we know of today.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, but you like telling me about these houses that were on sale in Dubai for like $200,000 at the time. And you like, hey, you thought about investing in there. And at the time I had money, but I didn't have like $200,000. But it just rang bells to me like how your mind always saw opportunities and things that most people didn't see. So
that's a good observation. Yeah, I think growing up in a place like Dubai, it's hard to not think like that. I think you get conditioned to pay attention to things like that. It's if you think of what the United States is, it's been here for a couple hundred years. Most places in the world, and Dubai's only been around for 50 years at the time that we were talking, and most things that they have is new. So anybody working on anything they're all startups. There's no such thing as an established governing system of any sort. So I think that's probably why I think like that.
Nah, you're very dope. So you also do a lot of different things. You are a business owner. So tell me about how you got into business, and what was like some of your earliest business memories that you have.
So it depends on how far you want to go back.
Take us to the beginning.
So to tell you how I got in business, I have to tell you my parents' story, because it starts with them. We grew up in like mud huts in Sri Lanka. Wow. Like my family didn't get electricity till I was like 8 or 9. Like real, like in the middle of nowhere Sri Lanka, not like the city Sri Lanka that, people typically immigrate from. Both my mom and my dad my dad got the opportunity to come and work in Dubai as in a hotel and as a like cleaning support staff, and then he brought my mom over, and she worked in like a nanny, I think, and I wasn't born at the time. And when they were in Dubai, what you know today of Dubai is not what Dubai was. It was a really tough place. Like you had labor camps. Like we lived and grew up in labor camps, and when my mom had me, they deported my mom and me because we weren't making like enough money to live in the country. So my dad stayed, and we went back to the village. And I grew up in the village till I was 7. My dad finally met the income threshold to bring us back, and that's like $1,500. Like that's the income threshold. Just FYI. Then when we came back, my mom got another job, like working somewhere, and we lived like just regular life in those like labor camp kind of communities. My mom got a job somewhere as at a dance school so that's the origin of my dance ability. But she got a job in a dance school as a janitor, and then she showed some kind of ability, so they promoted her to become a receptionist. And then she showed some more ability, and they promoted her to manager of the dance school. And then the woman that owned the dance school didn't have any children and had a really beautiful relationship. She's a Welsh lady, she had a really great relationship with my mom, and she gifted the entire business to my mom when I was 14. So we went from being like in poverty class to like upper middle class when I was in like early high school. When she was, my mom, neither of my parents finished school or didn't go to college. My mom has a crazy knack for learning things. She's just so good at learning anything. And I think she does that by just watching people and like integrating herself and trying stuff. So when she started looking at the books of the dance school, she would bring me to the room and she'd show me the finances and she'd show me the company. She took the company over when it was like struggling and at a loss. And I saw all of that. And she kept me in the room. Even though I didn't know what they were talking about, I just was like participating, just existing in the company of people talking about this business. That's when I first like got exposed to the concept or even the idea of what a business was. Like it wasn't like the coolest thing that I was like dreaming about when I was a kid was like paved roads. So coming to Dubai was like I had already won. Like I was already like set. Seeing that business was like a whole different like lens shift. Like it helped me start rethinking like how the world worked and all that jazz. Me being my egotistical young 14-year-old self like felt like I really could help. My mom had a marketing firm she was using at the time when she had just taken over the business and it wasn't going well, and I convinced her to let me run the ads. And she's like, how would you do this? And I was like, I don't know, I'll figure it out. And at that time I took like I self-taught myself how to code and like a couple of stuff, like how to build a site. Like this is back in the day, like HTML, like shit sites. Like if you like look this stuff up, you'll see like a website somewhere with my name on it with my 14-year-old build. It's super fucking silly, but that's my first time I did anything like entrepreneurial. It was like build that site. And then I took that and I went to my mom and I was like, all right, let me see, you see I did this, like can I run your ads? And she's like, fine, give it a try. So she gave me a small budget and I tried to run her ads and I completely bombed it, failed, like lost her trust. And then I spent another 6 months like figuring it out, and then I went on Reddit, YouTube, Google, all that jazz, and I learned how to run ads well. And that's my first time ever I like did anything was like run Facebook ads for my mom's business when I was 14. Did that for a couple of years and I learned how to do that better, got better every time. And then going into high school, I wanted to make a little bit of extra cash, so I like looked up like small businesses nearby and I was like, do you guys need any help? And I went to like coffee shops and I asked them like, do you guys run ads? Like, can I run your ads? And then I started picking up like customers, like just here and there, just small things. I got into breakdancing at the time, so like the driving force among all of this was figuring out how to make money so I can buy like dance shoes, like the right shoes and stuff. So yeah, that's when I first ever got into entrepreneurship, was when I was like 14, running like Facebook ads for like small businesses in Dubai.
That's such a great story. So how did you go from running ads at 14 to finding your way to the United States?
I had a relatively tough like home situation with my family, and I was butting heads a lot with my dad and my mom, and I knew that I didn't want to be in Dubai. I didn't like the culture. The country I felt very toxic and I didn't enjoy being there, so I wanted to get out. And since my mom got the business, like she had, like I'd never dreamed of like leaving Dubai. That was never ever an option. But after she got the business, like she could afford to send me to like college somewhere else. And I started looking at universities and I just wanted to get out of Dubai. I didn't really care where. And then I like looked up universities in London and New York, and so yeah, I was looking at all these different options to like anywhere but Dubai basically, and I saw a drone shot of the University of Buffalo. And I really wanted to be in New York. It felt like the place where like things happened and stuff. So I applied and I got accepted, and I didn't realize that Buffalo State University of New York, Buffalo, was not in Manhattan. I've never, my entire country, the United Arab Emirates or Sri Lanka, could fit inside Lake Erie or like inside New York State. So the concept of a country as big as the United States was just not in my brain just could not comprehend that. So once I got to college here, it was like international orientation. I think a couple of weeks in, I had asked my orientation leader, I was like, oh, how do I get to the Empire State Building? And he was like, oh, it's 8 hours away. And that's when I realized I wasn't in Manhattan, but I was happy where I was.
That's so dope. So you basically left Dubai, came to Buffalo, and while you're in Buffalo, what were some of the things that you were doing that helped you in your process of where you are now?
I came in as an undecided, like I wanted to do astrophysics, so I did like all these like classes, and I was enjoying myself. I didn't know you had to, this is like, it sounds dumb now, but I had no idea that you needed like credits and like they needed to add up in a certain order to graduate. So every semester I would never respond to my advisor. I would just like pick classes I thought were interesting, and I figured at 4 years it'd give me a degree. Like 3 years in is when I found out that wasn't the case. But yeah, I was like just hopping around doing all kinds of things that I found interesting. I did like philosophy classes and history classes and just anything I thought was interesting. In the first year, I started throwing house parties like yourself. I was just throwing parties at the house, and I was 17 and newly single. Like it was a thing to do, I spent way more time listening to what like the boy in me needed, than I didn't have any big dreams really, other than throwing parties and hopefully meeting girls and getting laid. But a friend of mine, while we were throwing these parties, was like, dude, there's a lot of people here, you should charge at the door. And I was like, sure, why not? And I did that. And then the house party thing like blew up. Like I was throwing like big parties, I was making good money. I did that for 2 years. And while I was doing that, this, I did like the Latin American Student Association, the African American Student Association, did all the like dance, anything with dance I did with every program. I had so much fun doing all that. So like I would invite all these people from different dance clubs to come. So we had all these really fun dance parties. And it got really big at some point. The biggest one we did was like a 3,000 person like event somewhere in Buffalo. But at the height of this, I had also met my wife at the time. Like she was a dance instructor at the university. And I really liked her, and we were working on a relationship. And then while we were dating, I cheated on her. Damn. And that, we broke up, and after that, I just started realizing, I was like, I liked her way more than what I'm getting from this lifestyle. So if I want to like pursue her, I can't have this lifestyle anymore. And that was like a really hard moment, because I was making really good money, and I had the dream of every like 12-year-old boy I was living. But I was like, I really like this girl, so I got to figure this out. So I dropped all my party stuff. In that party business, I was like, I did a lot of little things. I sold like liquor bottles turned into hookahs, and I sold like pre-rolled joints at the party to maximize my like profits per party.
That's so smart. That's crazy. You were ahead of the curve with the hookah. That's crazy.
I'd have all these empty like Hennessy bottles. I bought like a diamond cutter drill head, and I just started like drilling holes in them and selling them for like $80. And my cost of goods was like $5. It was amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, so I did that. But then after I like left that kind of lifestyle, and I was feeling like really lost. I was really happy with the direction I was taking the relationship, but I was lost in every other area of my life. And I learned about like the fact that you needed like these credits to get a job, and I started thinking about jobs, and immigration was a thing where like, okay, what am I going to do when I graduate? I need a job. If not, I can't leave. I have to leave the country and all that jazz. So it was just a little stressful period of time. And at that time I went to like the student entrepreneurial organization thing.
Blackstone?
Blackstone. Yeah.
Shout out to Blackstone.
Yeah. You know Hadar?
Of course.
Amazing woman. Talked to her, and she was like, there's just like two dudes. They're working on this startup. Seems like you have like some understanding about marketing. Like, do you want to just go talk to them? I was like, sure. So I went and talked to them, and they were building a company called Avid Audio. and they built wireless effects pedals for guitars. So they're both guitarists. I play the guitar, so there was like some kind of connection there. And they were down for me to help them with their marketing while they were doing their startup. And eventually they brought me on as a co-founder. They gave me equity in the company, and they exposed me to a world that I was never ever exposed to, which was venture capital. It's the idea of building companies for markets that don't exist, like, new products and things like that. And like the first thing I learned was like, oh, you got to raise money. Like I was like, oh, why would you raise money? Just sell stuff. And I was like, no, you don't have the stuff to sell yet. You got to build it, and the build has a cost, and so you need the money up front. It's like, so how do you get the money other than if it's not loans or financing? And they're like, you raise capital and you give equity. And I learned about what equity is, and like the CEO there, Shane, he's just a dope dude, and his I learned a lot just shadowing him. Just he would like prepare pitch decks and like go and do business plan competitions and raise 25K, 50K, 100K, and like just it was amazing just watching him do all that. So I feel like I fed off that energy a lot, learned a lot. I was doing all their like social media stuff, and I was helping them with their business plan stuff and like their go-to-market strategies, like things that were in my lane. But at the same time, I was like learning more about something I just was never exposed to. Through that, I got part of being part of that company was this was I think junior year. Buffalo just had they started something called the Open Coffee Club. 7 a.m. This is like in the city. It's not the university. This is like entrepreneurs would get together at 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. every Tuesday morning for coffee, and they would just network. I've never been like, open networking. Networking as a concept was foreign to me. So I went to the coffee club, and my job there was to like find investors for this company. So I would like talk to people, but as I talk to people, I'm hearing people's stories. I love asking like really deep questions. So I would ask people like, why did you start this? Where do you come from? Like all these like really cool people from all over different like countries, different ethnicities, different backgrounds, building farming companies and technology companies and barbershop companies. Like it was so cool just being part of that community. And I would go every Tuesday, and I would love going there. While we were doing this, we built, you know what Kickstarter is? Mm-hmm. We did like a Kickstarter campaign to raise money for the product. And then I learned about it. And then somebody else that was building a Kickstarter campaign from the community was like, hey, can you help me do this? I was like, I guess I could. And then I was like, could you pay me? And they're like, yeah, I'll pay you. So they paid me that was my first ever like contract where I did like work in the United States outside of the university for someone else. And then that like became a thing where other people would be like, oh, could you do this? Could you do that? Could you do this? And it was little things here and there. At first it was like logos and websites, and I didn't get into like big like ad campaigns or anything, but just like small things. When I was graduating college, I was so gung ho on like just going full time with Aviate Audio, but they didn't have the funds to we didn't have enough funds to like put us on full time payroll, and my immigration requirements stated that I needed to be on full time payroll. If not, I would lose status. So I needed to like start thinking about something else. That was like the driver. And in this time, like a couple really amazing things happened. I got like two really great mentors. Like their names are Clark Dever and Jack Greco. One of the dudes, like, the company ACV Auctions? It's like a car marketplace. They it's what's called a unicorn, like companies that go from $0 to $1 billion in under 7 years.
Damn.
He built that company, and him and Clark were the guys that were running the startup coffee club, and I got close to them, and we just became friends, and they became mentors to me. They would give me advice every time I had a problem. They would like listen, like support me in some way or form, like kind of what you talked about, what you did with the youth coaching stuff that you do. Same thing. I was the youth, they were doing the coaching. They saw something in me, and they felt like they could like impart their wisdom. So I loved learning. So every time I had something, I would just go to them. I'd just go to them and be like, this is what I'm thinking of. What do you think? And they would be like, fuck no, that's a terrible idea. Do this instead. And I'm like, fine. And I would do that for a long time. So when I graduated, I had like these big decisions to make about what I wanted to do with my life. And I had enough clients on the side where I felt like I could possibly make it. Also, like in between all of this, I started dog bandana. I created dog bandanas and like sold them on Amazon.
How did that go?
It failed, but it was something. It was cool. I really enjoyed it. That was when I like realized. So that was like my last year of college, and so junior I learned that I could learn from people. So, senior year I learned I could teach myself, which was like a really cool personal lesson where I took a bunch of like YouTube courses and stuff on like how to build like a e-commerce company on Amazon. So I did that. Like, you know, I like negotiated with dealers in like China to supply my stuff. I send them like emails for like units, and they would send me like stuff, and I would buy it. Like, you know, $20, $50, $100 here and there to like get like my initial run. I had no money. And then like I started selling on Amazon, and I started like making real sales, and you know, I started growing it, but I couldn't keep up with like the cash need that the business needed. So I just had to like spin it down. I was about to like really commit, but then my clients, like my side little projects, they were getting big. People really liked me for strategy because I had this like holistic look for how I see business. Like my experience with small business kept all my skills very practical, but my experience with venture kept me thinking really grand and big, and you know, new markets and things like that. So like, you know, startups and companies that had real products and were going to market, like I just had a unique skill set that was valuable to them, and I just kept refining that. That's when I started my reading habit. So I read like 100 books a year at least. And
wait, 1,500?
50 to 100.
Oh, 50 to 100. But that's still a lot of books.
It's a lot of books. And but that's like where I started realizing, like, if I can learn stuff from YouTube, like I bet there's books. So I like, my mentors first exposed me to like the lean startup and like traction and good to great and, you know, 0 to 1, like all the like basic like business like startup books. And then I just started evolving, going to like thicker, harder reads of like everything in the world of business has been done, and there's a really good documentation of that stuff. And if you're willing to take the time to learn it, like it's just all out there. So I took a list of all the great books that all the great, I started reading biographies of like people that founded like great companies. And I started Googling what are those people's favorite books. And then I started reading their favorite books. And I did that for a long, long time. So that helped me build a much more diverse skill set around the approach to business. And it helped me build like a consulting practice. So I started consulting businesses on how to grow, like just specifically in their marketing. Started like getting a little out of hand. Like I couldn't handle the work that I was getting. So then I started hiring contractors on Upwork and Fiverr and stuff like that. And then it just, again, still couldn't like get it going. So a friend of mine, who was I met in college, his name is Dylan. I met him when I was doing my Amazon business because he had one. He was selling turtle boards on Amazon.
Turtle boards?
Yeah, they're like those little boards where you put like letters on in the morning and you say like, good morning or sunshiny day or whatever. And he would just sell that on Amazon. And it was cool. He was a person that I met my first time in my life who had the same capacity to learn new shit as fast as I could. So like every week we would like share notes, like I learned this, you learned that, and like how do we apply? And we just kept sharing like that. We spent like 6 months doing that. So then I was like, hey dude, can you like stop doing what you're doing and come do this with me? And he said no. But I kept bugging him for like 6 months, and eventually he was like, I'll partner with you. So he came as my like co-founder to the agency. So then that 2020, so then the pandemic hit. Sorry, this is a long story. I don't know how much. Okay. So then the pandemic hit. I was out of college, got my degree, meaningless piece of shit, but I enjoyed my time in college. Yeah, so I was making no money. Like I was making like 10 grand a year, like my first year, personally, right? So I couldn't live off of that. My girlfriend at the time, she was a teacher, and she really held it down. She paid for our rent. She upfronted like she was also broke and makes like 45 grand or whatever as a teacher in Buffalo, and she would pay our rent. She'd take care of our living costs. She'd feed me, clothe me, and pay my insurance, like everything. She'd take care of everything, and she'd even give me money for my immigration. And we weren't even married at the time, like just amazing. And because of her, I had the free time to work on the business. And I did that for 2 years. And then while I was doing that, I started like my networking stuff that I did got bigger, and I started a nonprofit in the middle of the pandemic called Grow Buffalo Business, where like business owners could go virtually and network, because like a lot of people in Buffalo relied on networking to create business. So when the pandemic hit, it was really tough for them. So creating a virtual environment was like a big opportunity. That led to people knowing my name and like hearing more of me. So I started using that as a way for me to get customers while helping them with their needs for networking. So I did Grow Buffalo Business for like a year. And I, at the same time I started like charity, like sending like, we built like houses in Sri Lanka for like impoverished families and stuff. So I got into this like weird like nonprofit kick. I really enjoyed doing stuff like that, because like the business stuff is really hard and you eat a lot of shit often, and it's really stressful, lonely, and terrifying a lot of times. And when you look back and you're like, oh, I built a house for somebody because of the work I was able to do, it gives you a little bit of courage to keep moving forward. Like even though like you haven't made it, like it feels like you've done something. So I started like regularly doing like nonprofit work while I was doing the business, and that really kept me sane. But that then led to other people hearing about the nonprofit work I did, and then I got exposed to more people, and a lot of people supported and like gave money and donated to like a lot of the projects I was working on. Like we built a school and all kinds of cool stuff. So one thing led to the other. We had the agency, and now it was like a real thing. We started hiring people, and we fucked up immediately by like outsourcing all of our work and like all the quality of our production. When me and Dylan were doing it, it was amazing. But as soon as we started hiring people on Fiverr and Upwork, it just started failing miserably. We were losing clients left and right, and we just almost lost the business in the first year. Brought on another couple of partners that didn't work out, but just like a lot of like failure in that time period. And then at some point, like we just like got the hang of it. Like we were like kept experimenting, and then we finally like, oh, this is the thing that we're good at. We can like come to businesses that are extremely scalable. So these are not small businesses. These are not just venture cap businesses. These are businesses that have real product market fit, where like customers are proven to want this product. And if we take those customers, companies, we can scale them because we're really good at the technical part of marketing. We're very like data driven, all that jazz. Then we started doing that, and then all of a sudden the business that we're working with is scaling, and all of a sudden mine and Dylan's skills no longer were good enough to serve our customers. Like now they weren't spending, like we were spending like $500 a month in ad spend. Like our customers now spend $100K a month in ad spend, or $200K, like $500,000 a month in ad spend. Like those are the kind of projects that we look at now. And I was like, I've never done this shit before. So how would I ever know how to manage ad spend if somebody was giving me $5K a month or $10K a month or $20K a month to spend? So then we started like looking outside and be like, all right, let's find people who've done that before. So we ended up building like an internal recruiting arm and realizing that if we could find and source good talent, and we have like these customers, and we can create strategies and ways to operate and manage the customers, we can use the talent that we hire to execute the work, and then we can do the client management part of it. So we did that for a little while, and that went well, and then we hit a ceiling when we did like, I don't know, like 200K in the second year or something. And then we realized that's still not scalable, because like not every person that we hire is like as good as the other. So I'm not gonna there's so much detail, but I'll simplify by saying we scaled really fast and burned it all down because we overhired, and we got to like 27 employees at one point, and then we're taking on too many customers. We lost sight of like quality control, and then the business went from 27 employees to 4, and we had like 80 grand in payroll and $6,000 a month in revenue. Like we were just burning, and I took a bunch of debt, like, cause there was a moment where me and Dylan looked at each other, and I was like, we have two choices. We can stop and like take our losses and walk away and get a job and pay out our debt, or we can take more debt and like die in prison, or that's it. Like it's like either we're gonna figure this out or we're gonna die trying. So there was like this moment of like, fuck it, like we're gonna die trying. So we took like way more debt, and we like use the debt in the right way to rebuild ourselves, and then like rebuild our business in a profitable way with a focus on like value. And then we cracked the code, I think like 18 months ago, where we like found the formula how to scale companies, and all of a sudden our customers started growing so fast, and then we realized that there's a process and system that we could build to recreate this in new customers, and then we just started doing that, and then that just blew us up, and then we grew from there, and that's where we are today.
So this is all with Yamu?
This is all with Yamu.
Wow. And what is Yamu specifically?
Yamu is a marketing agency. We are a marketing agency that does everything online for scalable companies, businesses that have the potential to go from $0 to $100 million in under 5 years, or $0 to $1 billion under 7 years. Like those are the customers that we work with. So typically, like national, worldwide products or serve the software companies, like e-commerce companies, like things like that. But bigger. They're not big now, but they have the potential to get really big, and we're the team that they hire to build the marketing arm that's required to manage that level of scale.
How do you decide what client to take on or what client to pass on?
It's the same way I decide to build my company, values. We have 7 core values in the business, and if I feel like the clients can match those core values, then they're a good customer. So that's a person point of view, transparency, courageous action, extreme ownership. We have all these core values in our business: teamwork, collaboration. So if these people don't represent those core values when I got to talk to them, no matter how good their business is, I'll walk away. And on the flip side, they need to have already found scrappy ways to get customers. They've figured it out. They've hit $500K, $1 million a year in revenue, and they know how to do it to some degree, but they don't know how to operationally scale what they've had current success with. And we're the ones that can build the systems and build the teams that are necessary to scale something like that. So that's what we're doing now, amongst other things as well.
You also sit on the board of a lot of organizations.
Mm-hmm.
What made you want to do that?
Boards are really cool places to learn things, see how other people lead teams. So if I find an organization that it's a couple of things. If it's nonprofit, it's impact based, it's the thing that I want to use my skills to help. But sometimes it's boards that I want to be on just because I want to be exposed to the kind of knowledge that is on that board. Because my skills are really valuable, so a lot of people want me on their boards just because I have a certain function. But I'm one of 8 things that companies need. So when I go onto those boards, I get to listen to the 7 other things that other experts talk about. So boards are a really cool way for me to get exposed to really nuanced information that I wouldn't otherwise.
So you on the board of the Buffalo Zoo?
Yeah.
How did you get into the Buffalo Zoo, bro?
So I knew one of the I have a friend who was a customer, and he was one of the directors of 43 North, if you're familiar with, at some point, and then he started his own company afterwards. Sorry, not 43 North, Endeavor. He started a company afterwards, and we got to know each other really well. And he was on the board of the Buffalo Zoo, and he pitched me to them saying, I think you guys want this young person. He's going to bring a lot of value. And then I, showed up, and they liked me. So.
And what do you do as a board member exactly?
A lot of different things. Generally, their executive team, are super smart. They make all the decisions. They work with really cool, they already know what they're doing. They're coming to us for approvals. They trust that we have enough experience and knowledge to help support their approvals. So a lot of time we just sit there and listen to their option A, option B, and we vote or kind of say we like option B, option A, and they would present their arguments for why, and we support those decisions. Other than that, I'm helping them reorg their data systems. It's such 1980s data management system. So I'm helping them understand where their customers are coming from and how they flow through the zoo, and how it impacts their revenue, and how that revenue can be grown without big changes to priorities. A lot of things that they do are very cool. A lot of really great ideas that they have for implementing new strategies to get more people to come. But it's all very scattershot, one idea at a time. And I think ideas are a dime a dozen. I'm not the best idea guy. Everybody has a good idea. In a business that you want to scale, you want to have systems to control test idea A against idea B. And if you're working on a organization like the zoo, they've been testing ideas for decades. I would love to see the results of old ideas, because we're just maybe a board changes every 4 or 5 years. So we might be doing the same thing somebody tried 5 years ago and wasting millions of dollars doing this new thing, when like somebody had already tried it and failed it a long time ago, and they just didn't document it in a way that like we have meaningful value from it. So what I'm spending a lot of time helping them like ensure that what they're doing now, all their ideas, whatever they are documented in a way that like we can create like progress over a longer time frame.
Very dope. I want to go back a little bit because you did say a lot about just your journey and your process. I want to talk about your wife.
Mm-hmm.
What made you choose her to be your wife, and what did you see? Like, how important is having a wife as an entrepreneur?
That's an interesting question. I would say not important at all.
Really?
Yeah. I think if you want to be an entrepreneur, you're going to be an entrepreneur. Like whether you do, big part of an entrepreneur is like you do it like amongst all obstacles. Like the amount of like I am really grateful for her because of her I was able to do so much. I'm really grateful for my business partner. Because of him, I was able to do so much. But without both of them, I would have still done it. I would have figured it out. I've found another partner. Like so, I don't think it's important to entrepreneurship. However, if you rephrase that question and ask me how important is my wife to my journey, fucking crucial. Like, without her, I would not have been able to take the risks at the time that I took the risks. Without her, I wouldn't have been able to try and like fail as many times as I needed to in the beginning without her financial support. For some people, that's like living at home. I don't have a home here. I don't have a family here. So I need, like, if I had my parents here, maybe I would have stayed in their basement and built my company there. Maybe they would have fronted my immigration bills. Like, so I think it's important to have people that support you. I think it's so important to have people that support you. And for me, that was my wife. So if you depending on the way you ask the question.
I feel it. Okay, that's real. How did you know that she was the one?
I didn't. We just like the same things, and we just work on it every day. Like we'll find out if we're the one when we're dead.
That's an interesting perspective. Okay. All right. So when it comes to entrepreneurship and networking and scaling, what are some of the things that you've learned about scaling that has impacted your company?
The venture capital stuff really, really helped me so much. Other than the Yamu company, I also started a venture capital fund. So that's like another thing that I'm doing with a bunch of really, really dope people. That helps me so much because venture capitalists look at companies so differently than everybody else. Are you familiar with the world?
A little bit, but I was gonna ask you, what's the difference between venture capital and private equity?
So if you had a company that's worth $50 million, a private equity company would come and buy that company, buy out everybody, and then insert operating systems and stuff to increase the valuation of the company by like entering new markets, whatever. And then in a year or two, let's say they'll sell it for $75 million and take a $25 million profit. A venture capital fund would raise so that's what we did. We raised $250 million from a bunch of private, money individuals. And we said to them, we will return this capital back to you, a minimum of 12x up to 50x over a 7-8 year period. And we're going to do that by investing and taking a lot of little bets. So we don't actually go in and operate any businesses. We don't go in and we don't, some people take board seats, but we don't take board seats. We don't do anything like that. We just give really cool up and coming companies money. And then we take a small piece. So we don't take 100% ownership. We take 2% or 3%. And then someday when they hopefully become 10,000 times more valuable than they are, our $1 million investment becomes 10,000 times more valuable. So we take $250 million, like a private equity company would take $250 and buy 5 companies. Venture capital fund would take $250 million and take small pieces of 350 companies. And then what a venture capitalist does is they don't think every company they're gonna the rule of thumb in venture is you expect 10% of your portfolio to succeed and 90% of your investments to fail. So if we're spending $100 million in a venture capital fund, 90 million of that is going to go to waste, absolute waste. Those companies are going to die. Then 10 million, of that, 5 million will return 1-to-1, which is a waste. 2 of those companies may return 3 or 5x, and then 3 of those companies out of the 100 that you invested in can return 100x and make up for all your 93 mistakes. So venture capital is more about like volume, like where you are maybe investing in a thesis, like a market, where you're thinking like, we know that some, like I'll simplify it, but like let's say like you think that the market is going in the direction, like the fund that we have is a deep tech fund, so that means that we believe that in the next 10, 20 years, like the biggest companies that will appear are going to appear in the deep tech space. So things that are building like new materials, new innovative technologies, not software, not what we've seen today, but like new types of energy, electricity, that kind of stuff. So that's a theme. It's a category now. So we will take, let's say, 350 bets in that category, and then something will play out. Versus a PE would like just pick someone that they know is already crushing it, and they know they can go in and make them better. So like a venture capitalist is willing to take bets on companies that could fail.
So how does a venture capitalist find a good business? Like, how do you pick and choose businesses to invest in?
Every venture capital fund has something called a thesis. So it's basically their mission, like their statement of like this is what we invest in and this is what we don't invest in. So usually the founding team of the venture capital fund, whoever they are, have some kind of expertise that allow them to see winners amongst losers or amongst companies that could fail. So usually the theme that the venture capitalist fund will invest in is dependent on the skills of the founding partners, like whoever they are and what their skill sets are. So for example, for me, I've worked with a lot of scaling companies, so it's really easy for me in like a 30-minute phone call to like tell if this company is going to become a $100 million company or not. So that's a personal skill that I have that I share with my 8 other partners of the fund. So then when we look at companies and we have deal flow, which is like, we've been in business with the agency for a long time. I've been in the market like with, I've big network. So people send me deals all the time, like companies to look into all the time. And I pass them to like people I know that could invest in them. But now that I have a fund, what I would do is I would take the calls and I would assess them and see if like I can use my skills to assess if I can guess like that what they're saying is true, because they will pitch us whatever their vision is, and I'll try to like use my skills to assess if like what they're saying is true and if there's a real chance for them to achieve what they're planning to achieve, and then I'll invest in that. So the way a venture capitalist fund would make investment decision is their thesis, and that's where like the team comes together and like for some they would be like, oh, AI companies or impact based investing or food and beverage in e-commerce, or I don't know, like water safety tools. Like your thesis can be as narrow as wide as you want, but it just depends on the team. But the only big thing in venture is that LPs, the people that give the money to the fund, they generally, this is a venture investment is like, if let's say somebody has $100 and they like, they have real estate in their portfolio and they invest in stocks and all this stuff, they have like a small 5% put aside for really extremely risky bets that they will most likely not get a return from, or if they do, it's going to be insane returns. That's venture capital. So a lot of the requirement for a venture capital fund is if this company can't become $1 billion company that will offset the losses of my other 93 investments, it's not a good fit. So small businesses that are really profitable, or small companies like $2 to $10 million companies that are really profitable that could grow to 50 million, like, and we know that they will do that, is not a good investment for a venture capital fund, because the only return we can get from that is a 5x, and that was much better served for a PE, right? So a couple of things, but the main things is like the founding team's skills. That's like a big part of like that, their ability to become like $1 billion, like really big companies in a fast-ish time frame. I think are the two big things. And like us personally, like like we care about the founder, and like we want the founder to have an attachment to the product that's meaningful, like where like they're not just in it for the money, they have like some kind of like vision that's like really personal. Like those are things that like, again, venture capitalists can choose to add to their thesis. You don't have to, but like your thesis can be as like narrow and as wide as you want.
This is so fascinating to me, because it's like I'm looking at your development from UB to now, and it's just like, how did you get your mind to wrap around all of these things and these concepts?
100 books a year for every year since I graduated. I read like every single book in venture capital. I read like, reading a fuck ton.
And how did you make the time to do all this reading?
I mean, it's okay. There's always time in the day if you want to read. Like the amount of Netflix that anybody watches is like insane, right? Like you could replace that with reading any moment. But the hard thing I found for me was that when I'm tired, when I don't have the motivation, it's really hard to read. So I read like 10 books at a time. I open them like I don't like have a need to finish one book, and 50% of those books are sci-fi fantasy books, like really fun, nerdy, like just like enjoyable reads that I don't need to push through. And then 5 of them are like really hard to read, like papers that are just like complex. So I'll read like the complex shit for like a little bit, and then as soon as I get bored, instead of like going to a TV show, I'll read the fun sci-fi book. So it's still developing my reading muscle. And I wasn't consistent all the time. Like I crushed it for like a year. I didn't read for like 2 months, and I got it back. And so it's a journey of like discipline where I like had to keep working on it. But yeah, just everybody has their own practice. But I audiobook when I work out, and read in the morning, read at night if I can. So
you're not really like on social media like that much. You're not really.
I like posting on social media. It's how I stay in touch with people from everywhere in the world. I don't scroll as much as I used to. Okay, caveat here, right? Like, I am a victim to bad behaviors, and I just try to not let them consume me for too long. So, like, I spent like sometime I was like super stressed about a bunch of shit going on in my life. I read nothing, and I scrolled so much, and I like watched so much Netflix. And then like 2 months later, I was meditating every day, and I was reading all the time, and I was at the gym. And then 2 months later, I was scrolling again. So it's a back and forth. Like, I know I need to keep my shit together, but I can't always. But I forgive myself when I lose my focus, but I get back into it. So I hope that you're not taking away that I successfully read and had great habits for 4 years straight, because I did not.
So what was that process like, getting your habits together, and how have you been able to give yourself grace during this process? Because there was definitely a lot of time like your mental health was definitely challenged during this process.
Oh fuck yeah! Oh man, like the amount of times I've like put the shower on and like curled up in a ball and just like sat there crying because I'm like terrified of like looking at my computer and figuring out what I need to do next, and like absolutely no one can help me. It was way more than like a few times. So a lot of really hard times, like, and really hard decisions. I know this now, and it's really fun to articulately say that to you today on like this talk, but then I can totally like be in that state like 2 weeks later when I'm like stressed out. So I think a couple things, like when you start seeing how the system works, like at first you just do shit and you don't understand why. You're just doing something, you're doing action. You're just showing up and working every day and hoping something happens. You don't really know what the work is leading to because you're too dumb to understand. Like you don't have enough experience to understand what you're seeing. So in that time, you just show up. And then at some point, enough time has passed where you have a little bit of experience to start like seeing things that are patterns and that are like value, right? And then when you see that for the first time, I feel like you got to push until you get to like. So I think there's phases. There's phase 1, which is like, you gotta eat shit and grind, where you just do things without knowing you'll win for a long, long time. And then at some point you start seeing like crumbs of like things that you wouldn't have been able to pick up because your brain was too like inexperienced to understand it like 2 years ago. But now your brain sees, okay, like we just put this much time in, that led to this much value, and that company now benefit from it, and they want to continue to work with us. Like, that means that I could do this again. Like, that small observation I just made, I didn't, like, it's so crazy that I didn't see that 2 years ago. It took me years to realize that to build a business, I need to be valuable to someone else. Like, that, it sounds so simple for me to say now, but it took a lot of, like, learning to know that. So I would say now that I know that, there's no chance in hell, like, I'm giving up. Like, it's so clear to me what, like, my future looks like. I can eat shit for days now. Like, I'm not stressed. I don't worry about it too much. Like, if I like lose some habits, I'll pick them up later. Like, it's not a big deal. But in the beginning, there was a lot of like doubt and imposter syndrome of, oh, am I good enough? Or is this for me? Like, stuff like that. So to answer your question, Like I want to separate it into two parts. So like in the beginning when I didn't know, I just had to like do as much action as possible per day as possible for as long as possible. And every time I lost that action, I just got to remember to pick it up and like forgive myself and move on. And I, the time to forgive myself sometimes was months back then. Like I would like make a mistake and I would beat myself up over it for months. I make a mistake, give me like 3 hours, I'm over it now. Like, but it took like reps, So I think the second part of it is reps. Like the more you do it, the more comfortable you are in the pain, in the frustration, and the poor mental health. Like the more, like I feel like you got to lean into the. It sounds like I don't want this to come off the wrong way, but you got to lean into the things that make you feel like shit and do more of that. Like instead of trying to like save your mental health, like if you feel like shit, it means you're doing something right, and then you got to like keep doing the things that make you feel like shit for a while until they don't feel like shit anymore.
Nah, I love your mentality. I know this shit is not easy, and I know like you've done so much to get to this point. So for you, just to piggyback off the last topic with your mental health, like how do you deal with it? Is it just eat shit until you can't eat shit no more, or like do you meditate, or like what are some of the things that you do?
There's a really cool book called The Denial of Death. If anybody wants to read, they should. I feel like if you can accept that you're going to die and there's nothing you can do about it, and that's part of your life, and you have no fear towards death, you can have much less mental health issues and much less anxiety, because you're not if the worst thing that could happen is dying and you're okay with it, you can keep going. So I think there was a lot of internal work and meditation and like acid trips that I went through to like connect with like myself.
Have you done ashwagandha? Not ashwagandha. Ayahuasca.
No, I want to. I was in Peru like a few months ago, and I was like part of a ceremony, but I didn't participate. But damn. I'd like to. I do like regular LSD trips like once a quarter to like realign my state.
That's different.
Yeah, it LSD for me is like a ritualistic thing where it forces me to be really truthful with myself and stop lying to myself. Sometimes when you fail, you create like stories to protect yourself from the truth, and you like feed into your own lies. LSD helps me like confront that, and I've been turning that into a practice for a while now.
That's dope. You actually went on a trip with a bunch of entrepreneurs not too long ago.
Yeah, I do that often actually, but the most recent one was I went to Montana. It was like 15 male entrepreneurs between the age of 27 and 67 doing over $1 million up to whatever, and we put all of our tents and stuff into a backpack, and we hiked up to the middle of the mountains in the Yellowstone and set up tents and like had a campfire, and we fished, and we just hung out and like got raw and like open. People talk about their family, their wives, their children, their businesses, the mistakes, the successes. So many tears were shed and so many cool moments were had, and yeah, it was amazing.
How do you find these type of people and these type of communities to get involved in? Because let's say like someone like he wants to be involved in this type of stuff and meet these type of people. Like, what advice do you have on finding these type of networks in these communities?
Every city, everywhere in the world has networking groups. I would just start by going to them, and then 90% of people in the networking group probably aren't the right fit for who you want to surround yourself with. You have to go enough to find the people that you connect with. So now I pay for a lot of these trips. I can afford to do that now. But back then I would create the trips myself. I would find the 2 or 3 people I think are cool and be like, yo, can we like go do something for a weekend? And I would force them to hang out with me and like tell me their shit. And I would do the same thing. So I think there's like a fear of like, I think you got to be comfortable walking into a room and being like, I don't know anything, but I'm here to learn. And I have done nothing, and I'm here to learn. I have no success, and I'm here to learn. Like, feeling really comfortable with every part of you that, especially I think as a guy, like pride, ego, like if leaving that stuff at the door, like, and just showing up as like this coachable person that is like an empty vessel. And when you have experienced people in that room and they see a coachable person, they're looking for you as hard as you are looking for them. A lot of the really capable, experienced people, they are looking to impart their wisdom onto the next generation or the next group of people that can do it. And they're frustrated as hell because they're struggling to find people that can benefit from the wisdom they work so hard to acquire. If you can just show up and be like, I am coachable, like you will eventually find somebody to coach you.
That's amazing advice. And I'm going to definitely take that nugget for real. So you travel around the world and you are a digital nomad.
Yeah.
How did you decide to do that? And what is the process like of doing that?
I've always wanted to. So growing up in Dubai, I was exposed to so many cultures. My classroom, I had like 20 different nationalities of students in my 30-person classroom. So like so many cultures, and I just have love for culture. And when I went to UB, like part of why I went to the
African Student Association.
African Student Association, or the Latin American Student Association. Like those are the communities I was drawn to because they were bringing all this like cool stuff from their culture and stuff. But that was not enough for me. I wanted to go to where that's coming from, and but I didn't know how. I didn't have a means to do it. I think one of the years in my business, I felt like I could work and build this digitally. So I took a month to travel, and I took me and my wife did a road trip to California and back. We drove there and back in 30 days. Wow. That was my first experiment to see, can I continue to run my business while I'm like on the road from my laptop? Because really, what do? All my stuff that I do is on my laptop. I look at like information on like software platforms. I communicate with people on like asynchronous like Slack and things like that. And then I have Zoom calls or Google Meets to have meetings. Those are my three things. If I have Wi-Fi, I can do that anywhere. This is just a hypothesis, but I did that, and like my business was still around when I came back. So I was like, all right, maybe I could do this. So a year later, the business was doing a little bit better, and my wife needed some time to like make sure she finished her program. So she finished her program, and we got married, and everything kind of aligned. And like financially, I was feeling a lot more comfortable. So I was like, I can be comfortable taking on my wife's expenses as well. So she quit her job, and I was like, let's try it for like a little bit. And we went to Sri Lanka for a month, and so it's home. So I felt like that was a good starting point to kind of see how it would go, and nothing changed. I have like all my team, all my employees are remote, all my work is remote, all my clients are remote. So as long as I have a discipline where I can like manage the time zones and stuff, I can travel. And we chose to travel to cheap countries, so we didn't go to like places where we're gonna blow a lot of money, like Sri Lanka, Vietnam, Thailand, Kenya. I don't know, like we travel slow. So instead of doing like vacation style travel, we're in one country for a month at least. And then in that month, we like find like little coffee shops that we like, and like we settle down and we get to know the people. We like get in taxi drivers like, oh, where are you from? Can you take us to your village? And then we like hang out with them. But we have Wi-Fi and we work, so it works.
That's such an amazing way to live. What is some of the best memories you've had, and what's your favorite place that you've traveled to thus far?
Oh man, there's no favorite. Every place is unique for it, but I have moments that are like world class. Like we lived in a floating houseboat on Vietnam, where like this community of fishermen had been living in floating huts for 1,000 years, and they still live in those floating huts. And one of the younger kids was like, oh, I could turn this into Airbnb. So he like turned his family hut into an Airbnb. So we floated with him for like 2 nights in the like Vietnamese like bays. That was amazing. Like waking up every day, like water under you, fish everywhere, like exposed to so many like village culture. Like it wasn't a tourist spot at all. In Kenya, we were in a tent in like one of the reserves, like the big game reserves, I guess. 4 a.m, like there's lions, tigers, like not tigers, like zebras, like all the hippos everywhere. One morning I hear like rustling outside my tent, and I like was freaked out. It was like 4 a.m, and I like opened my tent zipper and I poked my head out to see what was out there, and there was a giraffe like where you're sitting, literally in this car seat. Like I could touch it if I wanted to, just munching on like a bush that was right in front of our tent. I got the coffee going, and then me and Abby like sat in our tent with our heads out, because this giraffe, for whatever reason, thought we were a rock. I think like it did not process that we were living things. So I spent like 2 hours just watching this like massive fucking giraffe eating bush shit for like 2 hours. It was amazing. The sun was rising on the back on the savannah. It was like, I can't even explain to you how amazing it was. And stuff in Peru, in the Amazon, we were like in the jungle in the Amazon, and like tribal communities there, like just exploring, looking for anacondas and stuff. Just amazing. It was. I can't pick a place. I can't pick a moment. There's so many. We've traveled for like a year. Like it's like so many countries, so many places.
Any advice for someone who wants to become a digital nomad?
It's cheaper than you fucking think. It's so cheap. Like my monthly expenses, like just to maintain our travel, like at the beginning, like we splurge a little bit later, like when I was able to have a little bit more money. But if you wanted to travel cheap, flights, food, stay, everything, for two people, we're spending less than like $2,500, $3,000 a month.
That's it?
Yes. In Vietnam, in Thailand, in like these cheap countries, like a really fucking good 3-course fine dining meal is like $8. If you want like a regular meal, like really nice meal, $1.
And how do you like pay for things? Like, do you use credit cards or like?
Yeah, a lot of places have credit cards, but we also take a lot of cash depending on the country. So like the reason our expenses were a little higher, we paid for excursions and things we didn't have to, but like we met a lot of digital nomads that were just spending like $1,000 a month. Like you totally could, you don't realize how cheap it is until you try it. So I don't like, people are like, oh, you like are successful financially and that's what you can do. So I'm like, no, I was traveling when I was making like less than like 50, 60K a year, like for both of us. That's like last year when we started.
Wow. So at this point in your career, what where are you? Like, where are you in this process? Like, where are you mentally? Where are you spiritually? Where are you in your process?
I have a vision. One of the things I think I'm really good at is building teams. And I have a really great team and really great culture. I have a vision to build an organization that lasts after I'm dead. Like one of the cool things about my business is every single employee is incentivized with revenue from the business. So like your income is not limited to your salary. So a lot of people like train up into like different roles as they grow. And there's like, I have a vision for my like head marketing strategist to graduate into CEOs inside the business and we fund them to build companies. So I imagine Yamu being a place like in 30 years, kids dream to work at because it's the best place you can go to like, like where there's an organization in the world that will see you for who you are and like know how to put you in a place where your skills are going to be taken fully advantage of and you're going to benefit from that and you're going to have a path of growth. So that's my vision. Hopefully we'll have like 10,000, 20,000 employees in the next 10 years.
Are you looking for investors?
No, no, business is doing good. We're very profitable and I don't think I need investors for this business. But the fund, I mean, we just closed it, but like if anybody wants to invest in venture, like that's probably where I raise money.
Okay, so if people want to hear more about your fund, connect with you, invest, and learn more about your company, where can they go to do so?
LinkedIn probably is a good place. Like, you can look me up, our website, yamumedia.com, or the fund's website, actual.vc. My phone number if you want to give it out. I don't know.
We can connect. We'll connect the dots on the end with that. I guess my final question for you is, what's next? Where are you going to next? What's the next move?
So we're here to spend time with my wife's family. But then September we're traveling again for another year. Next is like the next 3-4 years is like really focused on my wife. Last 4 years were focused on me. I was able to really grow and like really step into the things that I've always wanted to do. So hopefully the next 4 years is that for her, whatever that looks like. Maybe we're gonna try to have some kids soon, maybe next year. So planning for that. There's a part of me that wants to live on a sailboat with kids for a couple of years and like travel the world on a boat. So maybe I'll try to make that happen.
So you're gonna buy a boat?
A catamaran, ideally.
What's a catamaran?
It's like a sailing boat with like 2 hulls on 2 sides, and like you have like bedrooms on 2 sides and like a living area in the middle. It's like a comfy boat.
How much do those boats usually go for?
I have no idea.
I haven't looked it up yet.
I'll figure it out when I get there.
Yeah, that's dope. And
but maybe buying a home. Like we're like starting to think about buying a house and stuff. And
I mean, in Buffalo, it's definitely affordable. You can definitely buy a home.
Yeah. And and it's like financially, like for the first time in my life, I'm abundant. Like I'm not like behind, and I'm like starting to rethink like how I want to like plan. I never thought about this because like I was so focused on myself and the business and that stuff. So finances were more about like, oh, can I build a business? Like, do I have enough money to cash flow needs of my company. Never like, oh, do I have enough money to have a life, family with kids and stuff? So like I'm having those conversations now, thinking about what does that look like? Like how much do I want to keep making? Or how much do I want, like, where do I stop or do I take a step back? And me and my partner have like a lot of visions for the business. Like you should get him on the podcast. He's such a dope dude, and he's a big part of like what I'm trying to accomplish. And like we're just working through like what we want to do. Personal life, like for the first time we have a second to think about what we want, because we have teams now, people do things, so we're not only thinking about the business. Like I'm starting to think about my personal life a little bit. Like what do I want like my day-to-day look like after I finish traveling in a year.
And do you have any ideas of what that looks like now, or are you still figuring it out?
I'm still figuring it out. I don't know what city I want to live in. I'm like, I share too much, but like I take care of my family a lot, so figuring out how I want to like integrate with them. I have some visions to take care of my wife's family, so thinking about like what that looks like. So I don't really have clear ideas. I know what I want. I want to make sure my family's good and her family's good. I want to make sure that our kids are good and like we have a life that we're excited to show up to. Traveling is fun, but it's a lot of change, a lot of fast moving shit, and like it's exciting. So how do I maintain that level of excitement when we're not traveling is like probably a big question.
And I know I said I had my last question, but another question came to my mind. What's the secret to building good teams?
That's a good question. I think a really honest and vulnerable look at what your role is in that team is the start to building a good team. Like knowing, like, do you have a clear vision where you're building people to execute towards something that you clearly want them to accomplish? Or are you looking to be in a team where you're looking to learn, like, lean on them more? So I think, like, there's a lot of really great, like, books and stuff about general stuff, like, have good culture, good communication. Like, I'm not going to go into, like, I would say basics of, like, team building. But if you had to really, like, pin it down, I think when you are a leader and you're building teams, you don't realize like how toxic you are to the team, and until you like really work through your own like toxicity, which I have a lot of traits where like I'm terrible sometimes. Like I like show up to a meeting without context, and I expect everybody to like help me like get there, and like it's frustrating to work with me if that's the case. So like knowing like what your weaknesses are, so that you can build a team that like complements them, and you don't ever make anybody feel bad for weaknesses they have. Like I think a general aura of like openness is super important if you want a really good team. I could talk about teams for days.
I mean, three main points of building good teams.
Clear vision. Okay. Like everybody needs to know what we're working towards. Clear roles. Everybody needs to know what they're responsible for as towards that vision. Clear paths to challenge. Everybody needs to know what they're allowed to challenge and how to challenge those things.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you. I think this was a really great podcast. I think we had a lot of great conversations, and we learned a lot. And it was just great catching up with you. Like I said, if people want to follow you, what's your Instagram that they can come and follow you?
Kanishka, KANISHKA_W.
And are you planning on writing a book or anything like that, or a blog?
I'm writing like a sci-fi novel, but it's not really anything.
I think you definitely should do like a documentary of your travels as well. Yeah. You do a good job of it on your Instagram.
That's all my wife. I just repost what she makes.
But it's dope. Like it's like I said, like I watch all your content when you post it. When you guys are traveling and going and getting these tattoos and stuff. I'm like, bro, this dude is really living lavishly. Not lavishly, but he's living a life that's worth living. Like you're really taking advantage of the life that you have, and you're maximizing your life. And I love it, bro. I think it's an amazing experience, and it's inspiring. For real. So that's why I had to get you on this podcast, bro.
I appreciate you making the time.
Most definitely. All right. Well, you're tuning in to Talk Ain't Cheap. Thank you so much for listening and tuning in. We're going to make sure you can connect with my bro Kanishka. And like I said, you tune in to Talk Ain't Cheap. It's not that deep. It's a vibe.